I'm not who I used to be.
Welcome, Gothamites, to another episode of the Arkham Sessions. My name is Brian Ward. With me, as always, the psychologist of the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains of Gotham City, and now a galaxy far, far away. It's Dr. Drea Letamendi. Hello, Drea.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Eager to get going and head to Comic-Con.
Yes.
For some people who are listening to this, if you're a patron of ours, this episode will be going up at 9 p.m. Pacific on Saturday during Comic-Con. So you still have an opportunity to come see us at Sunday's meet and greet and at our panel on Sunday. But if you are not a patron yet and you are hearing this, we hope you had a good Comic-Con or stayed home and was safe from the millions of people that are going to be at Comic-Con. Our next episode, Drea, will actually be our Comic-Con panel. So that'll be going up in a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to hear what we talked about with Jeremy Adams and Livio Remendelli and Melissa Flores, all about the sort of psychology of their work, of their characters, and of writing in general. How are you, Drea? How excited are you that you're just hours away, really, from Comic-Con?
Oh, I'm certainly not ready. We're getting packed. We're vaxxed. We have masks. We're all of the things, just trying to plan for what will be a very busy show, but also just trying to stay safe and healthy. So certainly a mixture of anxiety and excitement. I always like our meet and greets. We haven't had one since 2019, I think. So that gives us an opportunity to see people in person and just talk about their questions, talk about the show a little bit, even get some suggestions for topics to cover or content to cover. You know, what film or programs, television shows, series are people interested in? So yeah. It's a great way to learn a little bit more about what our listeners prefer and what they enjoy.
Well, I hope when they come up to our meet and greet, they tell us all about their wanting to hear the psychology of the upcoming Lord of the Rings TV series on Amazon Prime, because that trailer just dropped last week, and I suddenly got more excited than I've been in a long time for it. And so that might have to go onto the list that we give patrons of choices for what we cover after this Star Wars franchise, which, by the way, we are coming up to a pretty big milestone in the Arkham Sessions. Drea, are you aware of what that milestone is?
I think it's our 200th episode.
Yes, it is. 200 episodes. By that time, we will have covered all of Batman the Animated Series, and its subsequent, the New Adventures of Batman and Robin. We will have covered the first season of Doom Patrol. We will have covered the first season of Steven Universe. We will have covered the MCU leading up to Endgame. And we will now have covered all of the Star Wars movies and a couple of the TV series.
We have really been kind of all over the map when it comes to science fiction, fantasy, and superhero stories.
Yeah, but we're really kind of in your wheelhouse of using pop culture in general to disseminate knowledge of psychology to the masses. But we will have completed, if we are on schedule, we will have completed all of Star Wars right before our 200th episode. So now we got to think about what to do for our very special 200th episode. And I think you even have a little bit of an idea.
Well, yes. So something that we have set up is a new button on our website for folks to record a message. This is the first time we've had something like this. it's super easy, actually. You just go to our website. Actually, you can find us on drdreaspsychology.com. That's my website, and just click on podcasts and you'll find the Arkham sessions there. You can also just go directly to speakpipe.com /the Arkham Sessions. Again, speakpipe.com /the Arkham Sessions. And there you'll find a place where you can just start recording a message. It's super easy. You click the button, you record a 2-minute message, and then you submit. That's all you got to do. And then we'll receive it. And maybe for our 200th episode, we can play some of the messages, answer some questions, maybe hear out some of our listeners' theories. Mm-hmm. It's a great way also, I think, to get a sense for what folks have enjoyed so far, or even talk about previous episodes. So yeah, I invite people to please check it out. Please leave us a message. You can leave more than one message. You can leave 5 messages. Just keep it brief. I think there's a 2-minute limit to them. And we are excited to hear from you.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Again, if you have any burning questions that have not been answered about Batman the Animated Series or Doom Patrol or Steven Universe, anything we've not already covered, or you want to talk to us about Star Wars, you can leave that message and we will play it here on the podcast and answer. And it's just a good way, maybe even a better way than we've been using in the past few years to engage with listeners and like-minded folks. Well, with that, let's get started talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. This was selected by our patrons to be a topic of discussion. These 6 episodes, you can find them on Disney Plus now, all 6 episodes. Drea, this series premiered during Star Wars Celebration. We got an opportunity to see those first couple of episodes while we were at Celebration. What were your thoughts on this series itself going into it? Was this a series that you were excited about seeing? This sort of middle-aged?
No, this is so weird. This is weird because I know so many people were excited about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. This is the story of what happens to Obi-Wan after Anakin falls to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting gap. You know, we know that, of course, given the other stories, which I guess I'm not supposed to talk about, but we know eventually that this Jedi becomes older and is a recluse on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Many years later.
He's basically the crazy old hermit.
Yeah. Well, and so
old Ben Kenobi.
Right. That's maybe a performance, maybe a half truth. But what happens to him during this time when Darth Vader is becoming an evil force in the Empire, in the universe, and this really what I would consider an emotional, maybe somewhat adrift Jedi Master is out on his own. What's weird is that I wasn't super excited when I heard about the show becoming a show, the announcements, the various trailers. And then when we watched the first episode, I immediately lit up. I connected to it. It made sense. It was a story that I cared about. What happens to him, you know?
Yeah, let me ask you, what was it about that first episode that made you light up? Was it the fact that you are now seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi as what I guess is some sort of basically at a butchering plant, trying to be a normal person, trying to hide who he is? Like, was that what was intriguing you?
What is that? I mean, it's a bit of a trope. It's something that we've seen before. A person with what I would consider maybe a superpower, maybe an ability, some kind of strength, some kind of piece of his identity. He has to basically go into hiding and assimilate to normal civilian kind of everyday life. And we see him in these moments. It almost reminded me of something that reminded me of a character we're not yet going to talk about, but a young girl on Jakku who is engaging in kind of these everyday tasks, working, having her meals, but being quite reflective, contemplative on her own. So I'm curious, the first episode drew me in because it is that narrative of what is it like for you to have to kind of go out on your own and leave a part of yourself behind, potentially even become a different person and survive.
Well, he's a refugee now, right? Like he is a refugee in a war that he has escaped, and he is now underground. He is now doing everything he can to assume a different identity. And one of the more heartbreaking moments for me was right there at the beginning of the first episode, where someone is on their way out. They're punching in their time card essentially, and they're getting paid for their labor, and they are getting significantly less than they deserve. And the big boss basically says, you got a problem, you come at me. And of course the guy's a huge hulk of a man, and Obi-Wan is watching the entire thing. Yeah. And just with his eyes, you can see how much he desperately wants to get involved, but he can't. He cannot reveal who he is, and so he just swallows it. He swallows his pride. He swallows that morality that he has always had, and he too even takes a smaller portion and leaves, and that's just who Obi-Wan is at this point. But part of this isn't performance. It's
not
genuinely,
here, no.
Yeah, it's
no.
genuinely.
I'm talking about later when he kind of comes across as a little more clueless than he is.
No, I totally understand what you mean. But what I'm saying is, and I think I'm just sort of introducing the idea of the character we are meeting. He is genuinely broken down at this point as well. He feels like the Jedi lost their battle with the Emperor. He doesn't really know of many, if any, others out there. I mean, he is exiled to Tatooine. He knows that Yoda has exiled himself somewhere else, but he has no idea if he's still alive. He doesn't know how many are out there. He only knows that other Jedi are being hunted, and quite successfully, by this group called the Inquisitors, led by the Grand Inquisitor. Basically, he is just doing everything he can to keep low. But there is a moment in those first couple of episodes where he meets a young Jedi who's on the run, and he has this conversation with him. I'm going to go ahead and play it here for you now.
You must leave. You'll draw too much attention.
But I have nowhere to go. They're hunting me. You have to help me.
You want my help? Take this. Walk into the middle of the desert and bury it in the ground. Stay hidden. Live a normal life.
What about the people that need us? What about the fight?
The fight is done. We lost.
What happened to you? You were once a great Jedi.
The time of the Jedi is over.
This is a guy who is genuinely broken down. He's not just someone who is trying to stay hidden. He is not the leader that he once was. And talk about that a little bit, Drea. This idea of defeat and what it does to you when the kid that you have raised since he was, 10? And it became a brother to you, became a son-like figure to you, then ends up slaughtering all of the other people you've ever known and loved, and joined the opposite side of the war. What does this do to a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I think there would be a lot of disillusionment and moral distress. That scene between this younger person looking to him for guidance is heartbreaking, because I think in his own worldview, his sense of who he is, Obi-Wan believes that he is a mentor, a leader, somebody who assists others, somebody who is holding some responsibility for the balance of the universe, and in the direction of equanimity toward everybody. So the idea that he essentially has to refuse this call to action, that he has to not only deny who he is and basically kind of fragment his self, but also to have to force himself to carry a different worldview, which is that piece of moral distress, having the anguish, anger, and sadness that he may have had some responsibility for the way things turned, for the state of the world, or the universe rather, that he may feel a slight bit of participation in that direction. So there's that guilt, there's that feeling of misalignment with his values. That's what moral distress kind of means, that you've done something or you've participated in something that ultimately leads to an outcome that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
And you know that. And there's that sense of shifting your perspective. I think it's also important to understand his purpose. He's not just adrift out there like languishing, although I don't know why he's living in a cave. Like his whole setup, his little apartment is a hole in a cave.
Yeah. I mean,
dirt.
I would say,
What's going on?
Well, but I think he's still trying to not have a footprint, really. Like he has to have money. He has to have a way to feed his, the sort of, the mule camel
His
like
mount.
beast, his mount. He has to be able to survive, but I think he's also trying to maintain as little
it's a minimalist
footprint.
thing, right?
Yeah.
If I have to
he's
get
a
up and
hermit.
go, if I have to get up and go, I've got to grab everything in my arms and ride out of here. I get that, but like, get a dresser, get a little handheld mirror. I don't know. It's just so disturbingly desolate and sad and vacant. His living area is, I think, a representation of his identity at this point.
But I also think as a Jedi, I think he probably maintains a little of the I don't think he has suddenly become like an Amish person who suddenly went to New York and decided to not be Amish anymore and invest in
this
the
is the
luxuries
Jedi
of
way,
life.
apparently.
Yeah, I think he, like any monk, would decide, I don't need any of these things. I don't need a dresser. I don't need
I don't know.
I don't need a
I've
couch or a
seen-
TV. I can literally live here on my own. I think
The
that's just
Jedi
the way of the
Council
Jedi.
at least had chairs. So there's that. But I get where you're going. It's a sense of,
It could also be his penance, right? It could be.
That's interesting.
It could be the way that he chooses to live because he feels that he doesn't deserve any of those.
oh my gosh,
Any of those finer things.
It's so sad. It's so sad. But I mentioned his purpose. He is on Tatooine, and
Always on Tatooine.
who else lives on Tatooine? It's young 10-year-old Luke with his caregivers, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, and they're miles away on their moisture farm. And I understand that Obi-Wan has made this promise to look after the children, and this is his way of ensuring the safety of this kid. In a way, he also understands that being caught and being in the same on the same planet, right? This is a risk that he's taking, that once he's found, he will be immediately connected to the children. So it's a little bit of a weird decision to stay on the same planet. But apparently this is his broader purpose. This is kind of his life's purpose now, is to oversee and protect this child.
Yeah, and there's a moment, and I'll play it here for you, but there's a moment where he, again, this is the sort of fan service that I don't need, but others do and love it. There's a moment where he leaves the little speeder toy that we later see Luke, a more adult Luke, sort of playing with in his hangar, in his garage. So we know that the origin is it was a toy that Obi-Wan Kenobi once left for him. Owen returns it to Kenobi and basically says, we told you to stay away. I want to play a little bit of this audio because it describes a greater purpose that will be happening at some point, presumably. But I also want to ask you if you think it was ever intended to happen. Here we go.
There's more to life than your farm, Owen. He needs to see that. There's a whole galaxy out there.
I'm asking you to leave us alone, Ben. I mean it.
Is he okay?
You don't care if he's okay. You care if he's showing.
It's my responsibility, Owen.
Well, I'm his uncle.
We talked about this. When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
Yeah. So there's this, at some point in time, I guess it was discussed, when Luke reaches a certain age, I am going to take him on as a Padawan. I am going to train him in the ways of the Force. Presumably because, that anger and that sort of, so much of what his father had is going to be in him, and they're wanting to make sure that he isn't trained by the dark side later or whatever. They want to make sure they get him ahead of time. But based on how dwindling Obi-Wan's own Force powers seem to be throughout this series, it makes you wonder if Obi-Wan was ever going to get back on that horse. Like, do you think that was just something he kept saying to himself, that one day I'm going to train this kid? Or do you think Obi-Wan at that point was too scared to ever begin this training? Because as a 10-year-old, Luke is already technically too old to begin the training.
It's interesting because I guess my question for you is, why do you think his powers are dwindling to begin with? I understand the Force very well. I am a Force specialist.
Oh, are you?
No, but I feel like I understand the Force well, in that it is something that, much like mindfulness and other types of meditative practice state of being, that you do need to engage in it frequently in order to become better at it. And better is such a judgment word, which is not good to use in this framework. But to be strong in the Force, you must be connected
work out in
to
the
it.
Force.
Yeah, you've got to train, you've got to practice, you've got to be one with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Obi-Wan, in order to protect himself and the kid, in order to not draw attention, in order to not create red flags, he is denying the Force, he's subliminating the Force, he's rejecting the Force. And so does that mean that when he needs to use it eventually, it's going to be weak?
It has atrophied.
Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. He has rejected it so much for so long and just sort of shoved it down that it's just not there when he needs it at this point. And I also think part of it's is a confidence thing. I think he is scared of the Force at this point. I think
say more about that. That's interesting.
Well, I feel like he probably believes that the Force to some degree has failed him in the same way that he has failed the Force. I mean, I
actually think it's the other way around, what you just said, that he's failed the Force.
Well, but I think it's both. I think it's a disillusionment. I think in the same way that there are priests out there who have suddenly questioned their lives as priests and religion and God as a whole, whether they find that answer that they're looking for that brings them back to their purpose or not. I think it's the same thing. I think that Obi-Wan believed on Mustafar that there was a greater purpose, and now was watching it burn up in this lava pit as he casually walked away. And I feel like there must have been, I think you had mentioned earlier, disillusionment. And I don't think that's just with him and the Jedi. I think it's with the Force in general. I think he is now questioning everything he's ever known.
So it's this sense of being let down because
Yes.
he did everything that he should have done. He trained the kid. He followed Qui-Gon's guidance. He let the council make decisions. He used the Force for good and ultimately participated in something that was incredibly evil, something that overpowered and eventually became institutional oppression.
Yes, and there's a moment at the end of, toward the end of there's a moment at the end of that Mustafar scene where he says, "You were supposed to be the chosen one. You were supposed to bring balance to the Force," and so this implies that he bought into this prophecy, and he bought into a meaning behind the prophecy that ultimately turned out to not be the meaning that he thought it was. So yeah, there's a moment where he has to question everything, and I think that includes the Force. But I don't think he's not taking responsibility for his own actions. I think he has a lot of self-blame and self-doubt as well. And I feel like he also feels like he has let the Force down, and as a result, the entire universe. Because now there's this character, Darth Vader, out there who has been properly trained to not just know basically everything Obi-Wan Kenobi knows, but potentially to be better than Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And to use it for destruction, which is not the way that Obi-Wan was taught, and certainly something that, like you said, he feels that he holds some responsibility for. The one thing I'd say too, in complete agreement, is that from a trauma-informed perspective, the fall of Anakin, or the conversion of Anakin to the dark side, is something that is intertwined with the Force. And I would agree that maybe there is something almost traumatic or re-triggering or re-traumatizing rather about Obi-Wan being connected to the Force, like the moments where he tries to use the Force, or he is feeling a sense of one with the Force. Some of that could have this visceral reaction where he would have this sense of re-traumatization, that the last time that he was using the Force, the last time that he was in a relationship with this state of being, with these emotions, it led to trauma. Yeah.
Plus, apparently, these Inquisitors have the ability to find people who are Force sensitive because those people are presumably using the Force, and I think that's another reason that he has rejected it.
Good point.
Is just to stay off the grid. You have to not be using it, otherwise you are a honing beacon for these Inquisitors. Let's talk about the Inquisitors as much as we can, because they're fairly one-dimensional, with the one exception of a character called the Third Sister, otherwise known as Reva. She is a human. She appears to be she appears to be the only sort of human Inquisitor in this group. And she has very, very high ambitions to one day be the Grand Inquisitor, the big boss, the captain of these Inquisitors, if you will. And she also has an obsession with finding a very specific Jedi, and of course that Jedi is Obi-Wan Kenobi. We learn throughout the course of this series that the reason she is looking for Obi-Wan is because she was one of the younglings who was presumably killed in the slaughter there at the Jedi Temple by none other than Anakin Skywalker right after he had become right after he'd been christened Darth Vader. And I want to ask you about this character, Drea, because she is filled with rage, filled with ambition, taking it upon herself to go against orders when she feels like she has the upper hand on Kenobi. She makes it her obsession. And by the way, there is a deeper reason for her obsession that we can talk about. But talk about Reva, the Third Sister, a little bit here.
Well, the deeper meaning with Reva, of course, is that she wants to utilize Obi-Wan as bait
Yeah.
to lure in Vader.
Yeah.
So it's like they're both, it's interesting. She's kind of playing both sides, and I understand both of them. I would say that initially we believe she wants the recognition, the affirmation. She wants to be seen as powerful, and she wants to be seen as a leader. And catching Obi-Wan is the way to do that. She will then be recognized by Vader.
Yeah.
I actually think there's some truth to that. Now we learned that the real purpose of that the primary reason is to get Vader and Obi-Wan together. And I believe she plans on killing Vader or having Obi-Wan kill Vader.
No,
I'm not
well,
quite sure.
I think she believes that Vader will inevitably kill Kenobi, but she will have her opportunity to kill Vader because of what I just said. She's a youngling, or was a youngling, and she specifically has memories of Anakin, also known as Darth Vader at the time. We always think of Vader only being the version of him in the suit.
No,
but he was dubbed
Darth
Vader.
Well, the thing about that is, this is one of those examples where destruction begets destruction. For her to witness this emerging Sith Lord, this person full of anger and rage, completely destroy her home, her murder her peers, for her to survive this means that her worldview, her sense of what the world is like, is very specific to this kind of threat. She was very young. These are young kids. I'm guessing between like 8 and 12 years old. These are younglings, and this is a critical stage. This is one of those vulnerable stages where being involved in something like that has a long-lasting impact.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that she kind of latches on to this destruction. Well, why don't I become this? I can dedicate my life to becoming just as oppressive, just as evil, just as destructive, to be next to the person that was a villain to me. This is my perpetrator. This is the person that victimized me. And this isn't completely fantasy. Sometimes we do this because it is accessible to us. What other choice does she have? Now, the other choice is survive, potentially be oppressed and killed, because she is a Jedi. She's Force sensitive, right? So her decision has some survival aspects to it, but it also has some psychological aspects to it, where what she witnessed was somehow weirdly inspiring.
Yeah.
Weirdly a way to draw a pathway for her. I'm going to follow the same path and be just as reckless, just as careless, just lacking the same empathy, right? Because I've seen it happen, and the end goal for me is then to oppress that person. Yeah. And that is such a strong motivation. We see it in her. We've talked on the show before about how this character has been, the actor has kind of been criticized for the stoic performance, but I think that's kind of a part. She is one-dimensional in her psychology, in that she's just hyper-focused on this. And I think that's why it's effective.
Yeah, she is the physical manifestation of Obi-Wan's own self-doubt and hatred, right? Because yes, she is using Obi-Wan as bait, but she also genuinely hates Kenobi, because Kenobi is the guy who trained the man who then went and killed everyone she's known and loved.
You've got to play the clip that you have about, and this is happening probably toward the end of the series, where she calls him out.
Yeah. She tracks him down on a planet, and the two of them are separated by a blast door. And this is when Kenobi figures out who she really is. Let's play this now.
The night of Order 66, you were a youngling. That's how you knew you saw him.
Stop.
Anakin killed the others.
That's enough.
He killed the other younglings,
Enough.
but somehow you...
Enough! I was too weak. When he left, I played dead. Hid with the bodies. Felt them go cold. They were the only family I knew.
You're not serving him, are you? You're hunting him. Let me help you.
Why would I ever trust you?
Because we want the same thing.
Do we, Obi-Wan? Do you really want Anakin dead? Where were you while he was killing my friends?
And you can't help feel kind of with her on this. This is, you know, she was a child.
Yeah, she is wondering, and it's also why she's okay tracking down and killing
Sure.
the other Jedi, is
Sure.
because she feels abandoned by all of them. They were children left at a temple with the greater reality that the Jedi were engaged in a war. Right.
Yeah.
This is all the people who were supposed to be protecting you. They're off on other planets.
Well, and so remember that while I don't condone the behavior, I agree with the feeling.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah.
You were supposed to protect us.
He was falling off of a big lizard.
Like we gave our lives over to you
Mm-hmm.
to be Padawans, to be trained, to commit ourselves to this larger universal mission.
And you said we gave our lives over to you, something that Obi-Wan even talks about in this series is they didn't volunteer their lives to the Jedi. They were taken from their families and from their homes, not
Right.
necessarily forcefully.
Sort of like foundlings, right?
Yeah. I mean, like Obi-Wan even says he believes he remembers having had a brother, right? Like he doesn't remember his life.
Oh, the Jedi are just so...
Yeah, the Jedi are taking children before the ages that they can truly remember much about their lives, and they are molding and shaping them into
Right.
child soldiers, essentially.
And so the feelings that she brings up, again, I don't agree with the violence that she engages in, but the feelings are so relatable, I think, that we understand that. Of course you feel betrayed. Of course you feel rageful. Of course you feel like you've got no other choice but to be destructive.
Yeah.
Because you have to create a schema in your mind for all of this to make sense to you. And that's who she is. I like that character very much. The other part of this that I appreciate is that she could be the next Anakin, so to speak. Like she is on her way to becoming singularly full of this kind of outlook, this perspective.
Yeah.
But there's this opportunity for her to shift her perspective. There's an opportunity for her to see something better and not only this very destructive path.
Yeah, she even at the end of the series, when she has survived yet another attack from Vader, we're not going to talk about the
fact that they left her alive.
Not just the fact that they left her alive, but that minutes later, from having been stabbed, run through by Darth Vader's own lightsaber, she's back on a ship and tracking down Luke Skywalker because she wants to kill the kid. She wants to become what Vader is and what Anakin Skywalker became. And then at the last minute, she comes upon that realization right when she has the opportunity to kill a helpless child. She realizes that she is on the path to becoming Vader. She pulls a Luke at the end of Jedi, which we can't talk about.
I think that's a really redeeming thing, right? She's done a lot of awful things. She's essentially helped these Inquisitor folks slaughter all these innocent Jedi, but she sees herself in young Luke, right? She sees that the very same thing that happened to her, she's now perpetuating, and she wants to end the cycle of abuse, right? She wants to interrupt that, maybe not as cognitively, maybe not at the level of this awareness, but certainly at an emotional awareness that she's so she's so exhausted by this trauma that she doesn't want to continue to be a part of it, and she certainly doesn't want to perpetuate it.
But then I want to ask, and I guess to some degree we're already talking about it with Kenobi to some degree, but I want to ask, because she is now a person who grew up as a child that was learning to become a soldier, who was disillusioned very early on in her training, and physically attacked, nearly killed, somehow survived. She has then joined a darker side in order to, exact vengeance. Her entire life has been consumed by this need. Where does she go from here? And I realize that I'm now asking you to write fanfic, but
the very thing you don't like.
But where does Reva go when she has to reject the person she is? Does she basically become Kenobi? Does everything become a little weaker and she goes and lives out in a cave somewhere and works at a meatpacking plant? Like, what does Reva do?
Well, remember that a lot of our own development throughout our lives has a lot to do with who we're with, who mentors us, who leads us, who guides us. Doesn't have to be a caregiver or a parent or even an institutional mentor, but we aren't really solitary beings. And she got to where she was because she looked to leaders around her to create that social manual. And I agree with you in the sense of having to burn that. Like, okay, I'm just completely cauterizing all of those rules, all of those ideas, all those notions of what I'm here to do. And some of those are self-created, as we talked about. So there's a whole rewriting of the narrative. She can do that on her own, but some of this, I would argue, could be facilitated by a trusting relationship.
Yeah.
And these communities really rely on mentorship. The Sith, the Rule of Two, the Jedi mentors or the Jedi masters. There's a lot in the society around who you go to for guidance, and she doesn't have that. So if you were to ask me to have this like wish fulfilling fanfic, it would be who is supporting her, who is showing her the way and seeing her value beyond violence. Then there are characters we'll see later who need this. Young characters we see later who need this. Rhymes with Milo Ken. But the sense of like, will people see me as having strength, as being resilient, as being powerful, and also being good? Can those things come together? Because all she's understood is that to see herself as those things, she has to be oppressive. So how do you become egalitarian? How do you become fair? How do you become empathetic? You certainly need kind of like a Star Wars therapist or somebody to guide your way and to affirm that inside of you, you have those qualities. They now need to be rewarded and recognized because the opposite has been true. She's been with the Inquisitors, who are these enforcers who do nothing but seek out deviants and using their language and destroy them. So she has to really spend a lot of time better understanding how she fits into this bigger universe without being attached to that.
Yeah. We cannot have a conversation about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series without actually talking about the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader. This might be, I don't even know why I'm using the word might. This is inevitably your greatest love in this franchise, right? Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. We are now seeing a Darth Vader that is somewhere in between Anakin and the Darth Vader that we know from the original trilogy. This is a character who still seems to have a little fire in him, still seems to be a bit passionate about finding his old mentor, tracking him down, and destroying him forever.
And by the way, in an effort to do that, he is a very reckless, impulsive, and violent, right?
He's the old Annie. He's the old Annie we know and love, right?
We sort of see that combination of now this fully suited, masked, dark figure with the lightsaber, with all of those violent abilities, mixed with this very ambitious kid, this impulsive kid, this selfish kid. And what we see is astonishing. This evil person who's strangling children and knocking people to the walls, and he comes into that village where he thinks Obi-Wan is.
Where he knows he is. He can feel him.
Yes, he feels him. He knows he's there, and he just completely wreaks havoc and is I don't even want to use the word insensitive, just like uncaring, like has little care for a human and alien life.
Yeah, well, part of that is to lure Obi-Wan out, because he knows that Obi-Wan is the purest of paladins, and the moment that he sees him going up against or just manhandling civilians with the Force and snapping their necks and dragging them across the ground, he knows that Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan that he always knew, would come out and protect them. And when he doesn't, I think he learns a little something about his old mentor, that he's broken. He's not the man he was. He must sense the fear in him. But all of that leads him to Obi-Wan, and they end up having a little mild scuffle with their lightsabers, where Obi-Wan clearly is not his match any longer. Vader kind of toys with him. He wants to see Kenobi suffer the way that he did on Mustafar, and actually ignites sort of this lake of fire between the two of them. He spills the fuel out and then uses his lightsaber to ignite the flames, and he physically drags Kenobi through the flames and starts to see maybe even he starts to see himself in those flames. He knows exactly what Obi-Wan's going through. I think Obi-Wan's probably got it a little better than Anakin did, because Anakin was literally on like a lava planet, and I think the lava is probably a bit more intense than the fuel on the sand that's on fire. But he does see what was happening to himself, happening to his old mentor, and I liked that moment. I think that moment was a fun character moment.
That was fun.
Yeah, as an audience member. I'm not saying it was fun for Obi-Wan. I'm saying as an audience member, I enjoyed watching Vader doing something that isn't just walking around with his hands on his belt and striking people down with lightsabers.
Well, and it has this sense of that's a part of his character, right? I want you to feel what I felt. I want to do to you what you did to me. And there's that satisfaction in, after all this time, being able to show that other person how much you've hurt me. It is something that we all kind of fantasize about. What if I did the thing to the person who, victimized me or hurt me in some way? That is a very human reaction. I was like, yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking too.
Yeah. So this is actually the reason I asked you earlier if this was a show that you were even looking forward to. This is actually the reason I was not looking forward to this series. You know me, I'm really big with context and dialogue, and what that dialogue means. And there are very specific lines of dialogue in episode 4 that suggest that Darth Vader has not seen his old mentor since the time that his legs were chopped off and he was lit on fire. And these moments, I actually have these two moments that I cling to here. The first is after the Millennium Falcon has been brought into the Death Star by the tractor beam, and Vader comes down, and this is what he says.
I sense something, a presence I've not felt since...
The interesting thing is he cuts himself off.
Yeah, that's kind of vague enough where this story here could work.
Right, except later, but also you'd want to think that the sense was, since I had my legs cut off and was left for dead on fire. Instead, it's, I have not felt since the time that he schooled me with whatever in a quarry, wherever they fight in the finale again. I can't remember. But then there's this line, and this is, I think, the more important line. And this is where the writers of this show really had their work cut out for them, because this is a big one. Let's take a listen here.
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Vader, up to this point, has really shown a significant mastery of being, of the Force. Like he even nearly kills Obi-Wan there in the quarry in their earlier meeting. So this line of dialogue really, I mean, yes, at the end of the series, the filmmakers really had to figure out a great way to make that line make sense, because, and they do. Obi-Wan has an epic lightsaber battle with him. He splits open the helmet, exposing the evil eye of Anakin Skywalker.
So this is where Anakin and Darth Vader are both, I'm saying both revealed. We know they're both present, but they're both revealed at the same time. And I really like that scene because you have the helmet crushed and broken. Mm-hmm. You see half of Anakin's face showing through. You see his expressions. He's making that human connection, and you see the pain within him. And there's a dialogue there that you have.
I have it.
Yeah, will describe this better than I can.
Yeah. This is, I think I know exactly the one you're talking about. Let me play it and you let me know.
I'm sorry, Anakin. For all of it.
I am not your failure,
Obi-Wan.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
This, of course, is the dialogue that accounts for the controversial lie that Obi-Wan told Luke on Tatooine about how Darth Vader killed his father And then later he says, well, then what I said was true from a certain point of view. Tell me what you think about that quote coming out of Darth Vader's.
This is an admission. This is important for a couple of reasons. One is that while he continues to absolutely hate Obi-Wan and to hold Obi-Wan responsible for the rejection he felt, the sense of just the lack of validation he felt, he also is saying, I'm now responsible for who I've become. I am willingly being this way. I get to own that. You don't own that. In a way, it's almost prideful. It's not smug, but it's sort of this excessive pride in realizing that he's become this whole new person, and he fully feels that it's what he should do and what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And takes pride in that. And meanwhile, it does serve, I believe, to reduce Obi-Wan's sense of guilt in some way. It's not going to completely, erase that sense of guilt and responsibility, but it may show Obi-Wan something that he's not recognized before, which is this kid is completely lost to the dark side and completely enfolded in this by Palpatine, by the Emperor, and that there's nothing left to connect with. There's nothing. There was maybe some hope in this exchange that Obi-Wan had to convince Anakin to come back, to convince Anakin to just reject this and to have an opportunity to redeem himself, and that's not going to happen. Yeah. This is like the second chance, right? After Mustafar, this is I'm going to try this again. And Obi-Wan manages to stay resilient and willful and patient despite the amount of fighting they had to do to get here, to get to this conversation. And this is kind of how, sadly, it culminates to this point of no return.
Yeah. I as you talk about that, I'm left with questions, and maybe this is hubris on Obi-Wan's part, or maybe it's just an unfortunate optimism that is just foolhardy, which is if you leave your brother without legs, filled with rage. I mean, so much to the point that his eyes are now yellow and red versus, whatever.
No, like his face was burning off. That was bad.
No, I understand. But before that, Anakin looks up at him and says, I hate you.
Yeah.
And this is before he's on fire.
Okay.
But his eyes are yellow and red. Like he is consumed with a rage that is now affecting him physically, and then he's lit on fire, and his entire body is left there to die. Then all this time takes place. Another 10 years takes place. What about that moment made Obi-Wan think there might still be a chance? Like, I might still be able to talk you out of this. I just don't understand the logic there, unless it's simply a formality of, I need to do what I can to see if I can talk Anakin back in.
So like a last resort or a
yes.
last opportunity. I mean, I think...
And by the way, this is something that Luke succeeds at doing.
Right. I mean, but a part of this is really symbolic too for Obi-Wan, because what you just described is the last time he saw him. So I don't know if this is restorative for him or a sense of trying to get closure, trying to better understand what you're just describing, actually. What little narrow possibility is there that Anakin is still here with me? He has that unanswered question. He has that biting at him. He needs to get that fulfillment, and it's disappointing. But I understand what you're saying. Realistically, what are his realistic expectations? It's so, like, what part of you wants to say, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
What part of you says, this is not who I am or what I want to be either? I don't want to be that guy that kills my best friend. And the part of this that I want to make sure we talk about...
I want to raise a 10-year-old boy to kill my best friend.
Oh my God. The part of this that I want to talk about is that friendship piece. That this... Obi-Wan has no friends. He is now... And this, you're right, there's something about the Jedi way that really honors solitude and self-efficacy and lack of attachments. But Obi-Wan is an unattached person. And he doesn't have anybody. He has this kid that he's supposed to look after, but he's told by that kid's caregiver, stay away. Mm-hmm. Like, get the F out. We really don't want you near. Like, this existence can be incredibly saddening for him. I think, to answer your question, Brian, he's looking to see, is my best friend still here? Mm-hmm. Because I feel alone. I feel lonely. And I don't want to stigmatize or pathologize single people, like being on your own, not having a family, all that. Like, that in and of itself can be healthy. But this is a guy who is unattached in all ways. He doesn't have a social circle. He doesn't have friends. He doesn't have family. So what happened in the disruption of their relationship is a huge part of Obi-Wan's life. This is the biggest trauma, I think, mm-hmm. of his life. This is a huge moment for him, maybe to recognize the truth, to solidify that this is real, this is really happening. And when we think about the friendship with someone like Anakin, and by the way, there's a lot of research that shows that friendships, you know how people will say, like, well, my friends are my family, mm-hmm. or my friendships are even stronger. Those relationships are stronger mm-hmm. than my relationships with family. There's actually some bit of truth to that for a lot of people. I know people feel like, you should never love anyone more than you love your family. But the reality is that our friendships, our non-blooded bonds, can be a huge source of connection and empathy, and give that feeling of family without, like, literally having the stress that family members can bring you. Sure. Generally speaking. Sure. Right? Sometimes family relationships are, they feel obligatory, they feel complicated, they are very different, that you did not have a choice. Yeah. With friendships, you had a choice. You wanted to be with them. You mm-hmm. want to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. And if that friendship is, well, I'd say if it's unlike this right now, if it's one that's very positive for you, it can be really healthy for you. Right. And by the way, as we get older, our friendships prove to be more beneficial to our health, our well-being, our happiness compared to family members. So there's
My father is listening, Drea.
I'm not saying that one is better than the other necessarily, right. But let's not undermine or like under anticipate, underappreciate mm-hmm. the fact that a friendship, especially one between Anakin and Obi-Wan, was incredibly special to them, but also had a lot to do with giving them, in the beginning at least, a healthy lifestyle. That this was really good for them. Yeah. Now, Anakin at this time is not a good friend, right? When you're friends with somebody who is a source of stress, that is actually tied to ongoing chronic illness, ongoing mental health problems, sleep disturbances, and other issues, right? So, of course, when you're friends with somebody who is, I'd say, a high conflict person, which we talked about before, HCPs, high conflict people, or people who have high conflict personalities, it can be more difficult to interact with them. And I think we see and hear some of the different ways in which Obi-Wan tries to reach his friend. And some of these things are actually helpful and accurate. So for folks listening, if you want to continue to be friends with someone who's an HCP, someone who just has this ongoing chronic inability to relate in positive ways, and sometimes is angry, sometimes is blaming, sometimes doesn't connect with you emotionally as much as you'd like them to, some things that you can do. First is try not to react by blaming them back. So once they start to blame, don't have your reaction be, well, you shouldn't have been on Mustafar to begin with. It's your fault, or whatever, how he would have maybe blamed him for what happened. And we notice that Obi-Wan doesn't really do that. He doesn't blame Anakin for his choices. The other thing to mention is not to argue with their distorted thinking. So for Anakin to hold this set of beliefs that he was right, that he needed to do what he did to save Padme, whatever distorted thinking he has, it's important that Obi-Wan not evidence that, not support those beliefs. It doesn't make sense to do that, but it also doesn't make sense to have a huge argument or try to argue against that distorted thinking. That doesn't really work because they're really fixed in their ways, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And then lastly, something very practical is to use the Biff method.
The Biff method?
The Biff method is what I was trying to say. The Biff method, BIFF. Be brief, be informative, be friendly, and be firm. Now, this is assuming you're not in a deadly lightsaber battle out in the quarry, but somebody is argumentative with you, maybe over email, maybe in person, maybe over text, and you don't want it to amplify or escalate. The Biff method is be brief, so just state what it is you're trying to communicate, what it is you're trying to get across in ways that are very clear, and use communication that doesn't have any additional kind of labels or judgment to it. So kind of be brief about it. Be informative, just the facts, just whatever you need to convey in a style that is not, rude, in a style that isn't sarcastic. You're just informing them. And then finally, the friendly aspect of it, use friendly gestures, friendly greetings, friendly ways to show that you're not trying to start a fight here, and then be firm. So you also don't want to be walked all over. So be firm in wrapping things up. I'll expect to hear from you next week, or, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you the next time we see each other. So it doesn't open it up to, I'm now going to have this, really heated argument with you. I'm really just trying to tell you what I'm trying to communicate and then have it wrap up.
Well, Drea, you I don't mean to correct the psychologist here, but you left out the most important part of the Biff method.
Leave them alive?
At the end of the entire interaction, you call them a butthead. That's very important. And,
wait, what?
For those out there who know, they know.
I didn't call anybody a butthead.
Yeah, I know you didn't. So, Drea, there's a little movie called Back to the Future where the villain is named Biff. And,
oh my gosh.
And so...
is it spelled with two Fs?
Yes.
Okay,
Biff
so
Tannen.
this is good. This is a good... So you know what? Have I seen these? Here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
If it's an easy way to remember Biff, remember that Biff from Back to the Future is an HCP, a high conflict person.
There you go.
And in order to deal with a Biff, you need to use Biff so that you don't trigger them, you don't escalate, you don't blame back, you try to keep things pretty smooth.
Yeah. There you go. Look at that. God, look at the way you just use all kinds of pop culture to bring in
Trying to help.
the science. There are a couple of characters we have not really discussed from this series, and I think we've not discussed Leia, little baby Leia.
And Lola, her little droid.
Her little droid Lola. I think I will say this about Leia. I did think that the actress, that the little girl Vivian Lyra Blair, I thought she was fantastic. I think she was appropriately adorable to play a 10-year-old Leia Organa. She is clearly en route to becoming the princess we all know and love from the series. I know a lot of people gave her grief, or not her, but gave her character grief for already being that character at such a young age. But look, who hasn't known a 10-year-old that is already 30?
I feel like that was you.
It wasn't me. There's another person that I know that was already 30 by the time they were 10.
Who was that?
To someone I'm not going to bring up right here on the show, but
I'm very literal. I'm not sure if you're talking about me.
No.
Okay.
No. I didn't know you when you were 10. So
well, you know me now.
I don't have that data. I don't have the data, Drea. I don't know. But I thought Vivian Lyra Blair was absolutely fantastic in this role. She was perfectly adorable. And there's an interesting sort of dichotomy between the way that an older, more experienced, and maybe the grizzled veteran Obi-Wan treats her more like a little daughter than he treated young Anakin like a little brother. And I feel like that is also sort of the difference between how Anakin grew up and how Leia will grow up.
A difference that is intentional. I think Obi-Wan realizes the care and compassion and love that he can show somebody who he's protecting.
Yeah.
And that I think is restorative for him.
Yeah.
I think that is meant in and of itself genuine in caring for Leia, but I think some of that also is a part of Obi-Wan's own psychology, trying to make sense of what happened with Anakin and even give this kind of healing aspect to feeling like he failed this other young kid. But also, I'm so glad you brought this up, because there's this, can you, if you have available that clip where he's actually talking about Padme in his description of how Leia is kind of like her mother.
I think I know that there's a couple of allusions to it in the series. I think I know exactly the one you're talking about. You're the one talking about the one toward the end? Yes, I have that one, and we'll play it right here.
When I said before that I didn't know your parents, Princess Leia Organa, you are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are qualities that came from your mother. But you're also passionate and fearless, forthright. And these are gifts from your father. Both were exceptional people who bore an exceptional daughter.
Again, just underscoring that he's adrift right now. He's not exactly himself, but that he did have relationships that he cared about. He had relationships that were important to him. And in a way, even though he couldn't get through to Anakin, he absolutely honors and preserves the loving relationship he had with Padme. Right? So it's sad too, right? Because he's lost them both.
Yeah.
And weirdly, maybe not weirdly because he has to keep a distance, but he's now saying goodbye to young Leia.
Yeah.
So his life right now is full of these personal losses that he has to somehow make sense of, make a narrative of, where he feels like he can go on and have continued purpose.
And presumably, the even sadder part, presumably, assuming there isn't a second season where they meet up again.
This is it.
Yeah, he'll never see her again because as they rescue her and lead her toward the Millennium Falcon, that's when he sacrifices himself to Vader. And so, this is their last meeting.
It's an interesting ending because I guess it's happy. It's a happy ending.
It's closure, though, too.
Well, it's not what I was going to say. It's a happy ending for Reva, sort of. Everybody sort of ends up in places that they didn't expect. And yet, for Obi-Wan, I agree, it's a sense of closure, but it is the opening to the next chapter of a very isolated lifestyle.
Well, and I don't mean necessarily closure for him, but yes, I agree with you there.
Now I'm going to go back to my cave and just be on my own. Yeah.
I hope no one else has moved in. But it is also and by the way, he moves out of his cave at the end of the series. He packs up everything onto his beast and then presumably leaves that area, like the Mos Espa area, to go off on kung fu like a kung fu like journey and adventures, helping people across the Dune Sea.
I wouldn't mind
I feel
watching that kind of show.
Well, that's kind of what I hoped the show would be.
Completely unrelated to these two kids. Show me because I mean, Ewan McGregor is such an amazing choice for this character. I just absolutely love him. I would see that series.
Yeah,
and maybe he'd get a dresser.
Yeah, in a little apartment somewhere.
I would love to see that show.
But I was going to say it's closure for her because she feels like she's never known her real parents, her real, as this adopted kid who knows that she's adopted and feels like she does not belong in the Organa family because she is being told by cousins that she's not truly the princess. She is not a blood relative. And no matter how much, Jimmy Smits's character of Bail Organa is trying to reinforce her place within the family, she doesn't feel like she belongs. And in that moment where Obi-Wan is telling her exactly who her mother was, she now realizes like this is a little bit of closure. I'm telling you what you need to know about where you came from. Well, what you need to know about where you came from. He's leaving out the Anakin stuff, but yeah, it's a good moment. It's a good relationship, I think. The only other character that I think is worth even really touching on, and it's ever so slightly, is the character of Tala, who is an Imperial officer who has seen the error of her ways and is now using her position within the Empire to help the Jedi escape. This is a character who has literally helped kill and witnessed the killing of what she realizes is innocent people. And I think she represents anyone who has fought in a military that they've suddenly become disillusioned at what their mission is and realizes that there are black and white, right and wrong in terms of like orders. And so she's the good soldier who then realizes that this was a mistake and that she's been fighting for the wrong side, and she switches sides and ultimately ends up sacrificing herself with your new favorite character. Was it Ned?
Oh, the loader.
Yeah, the speechless lumbering loader who Tala even says, because he can't speak, he's not designed to be able to speak. He's just a loader. There's no reason for him to be able to communicate. She says that actions speak louder than words. And what does he do? He sacrifices himself to protect her. And so in that, without having said a word, in that one action of bending over and shielding her from the further laser blasts, shows that he has deep love and respect for Tala, for his I don't want to call her his master, but I only say that because C-3PO refers to Luke as like Master
Yeah,
Luke,
yeah.
and, because he's a protocol droid. But yeah, like that relationship, and I think that character, bears a little, deserves a little acknowledgement.
I really thought this show was full of deeper character stories than maybe the prequels. I'm not sure, but I very much enjoyed the show. I felt like one of the big themes was whether you can really truly change your perspective and live a different way. Can your psychology adapt in the direction of your moral compass? Are you able to do that? And we see various characters struggle through this and succeed and have various outcomes that tell us more about our own psychology. So I very much liked this show. I don't think you have to see the prequels. You maybe need to see the third, the final movie in the original.
They also wrap it all up in the beginning with the recap.
That's true. You don't even have to see the prequel films. You can just start with this. But I do recommend it. We've spoiled the whole thing, but I think it's fantastic, and it's been delightful to watch this show. It's sparked my Star Wars fandom or my delight in Star Wars differently than The Mandalorian, than the Boba Fett show, the Book of Boba Fett, and even a little bit the prequels. Like, this felt to me very much connected to. It was almost like a hybrid of the prequels and the original trilogy in a way. So I had a very positive response to it.
Good. Next time you're going to hear our analysis of writing and mental health and psychology in writing, again, as we discuss with our panelists at Comic-Con. That'll be the next episode. And then after that, we're going to get into Rogue One. Rogue One is the next movie that our patrons decided that we needed to watch. And then we will finally dive into that original trilogy that you and I originally grew up with. And so I'm excited about all the things that are coming up. More and more Star Wars. I want to thank a new patron that joined and helped make this episode possible. Drea, they are our dear friends, Hero's Journey Fitness. David Nett and Christy Blacknett have joined, and they are at the $5 tier where they get a shout out. They are Hero's Journey Fitness, someone that you have worked with and come to love, especially during the pandemic, in terms of their workout regimen. Describe Hero's Journey Fitness a little bit.
Hero's Journey Fitness is a community of folks who are working out, working toward better health, and accepting all different types of individuals, body types, and health lifestyles in the direction of movement and working out, right? And so there's this amazing intersection with the lifestyle of nerds and geeks, right? So the things that we love, ranging from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings to comics to fantasy, and the workouts.
They literally theme their workouts they're to these things. Yes.
They're based in science and also themed to these fantasy worlds. So it's an amazing intersection of those things that we care about. And again, it's such a welcoming and inclusive space, both virtually and in person. If you're in Los Angeles, you can access their physical gym. Otherwise, you can join their Patreon and find their virtual sessions.
Yeah. So thank you, David and Christy and Hero's Journey Fitness, for your membership and your support of the Arkham Sessions. Till next time, Drea, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you online?
You know what? You can go to speakpipe.com/the Arkham Sessions and leave us a message. We would love to hear your audio messages. Connect, introduce yourself, tell us what you love, tell us what you're into, maybe talk about the profession that you're in if it's related to the things we talk about, and can't wait to hear from you.
You know what? I'm going to let you go. That's where you can find me too. speakpipe.com/the Arkham Sessions. That's where you can find us. And of course, join our family over at Fanbase Press. Till next time, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Drea Letamendi.
And together we are
the Arkham Sessions.
you made me.